Now, a seventh MEP for the West Midlands starts work today. Adrian McIntyre, a Conservative, was handed the post because the European Parliament in Brussels said the UK was underrepresented. But no one voted for her. Critics say the additional MEP for the West Midlands isn't needed and is too expensive, as it's claimed that each member of the European Parliament can cost the taxpayer more than £2 million a year. So I want to ask you the question this afternoon. Have you missed not having a seventh MEP around for the West Midlands? Are you pleased that we now have an extra voice in Europe? Or do you think it's a waste of money? 08453 00 9956 is the number to call. Let's speak to Anthea McIntyre, the West Midlands new MEP. She's a Conservative. Hello, Anthea.
Hello.
Yeah, hi, Anthea. Don't you think it's a bit odd, let me ask you bluntly, that you're representing the West Midlands in the European Parliament, but you've never been elected?
Well, no, it's not odd. I was elected back in 2009 with all the other MEPs. At the time, the Lisbon Treaty hadn't come into force and the additional member hadn't been allocated. We knew it was coming and we knew that it would come to the West Midlands. It's just taken 2.5 years of fairly typical bureaucracy before it's sorted out. So it's happened. I knew it would. I'm very glad it has happened. I'm glad to be starting work on behalf of the people of the West Midlands.
But at those elections, people were voting for 6 MEPs in the West Midlands. They voted those 6 in. You weren't one of them. That's the way it goes. That's the way the cookie crumbles.
You see, they vote for party lists. They didn't vote for individuals at all. I don't like the system. I would much prefer to have single-member constituencies because I think your question to the public about whether they're going to notice one more or one less MEP is probably going to produce a lot of people saying they don't have a clue who they are anyway. And that's why it's difficult to represent as large a region as we've got. But that's the system we have, and I think it's important to get all the voices for the West Midlands that we can. You know, we need to get the most out of Europe, and we need to start combating some of the nonsenses and all the ridiculous red tape that keeps getting piled on us.
Yeah, although some people might say this is an example of those nonsenses, the fact that you've been appointed and not elected.
Well, no, I don't think you want me to bore you with the D'Hondt formula and the workings of the way MEPs are elected.
Funnily enough,
it's done on a party list, and it's done on a PR basis. And I have to say, I don't like PR either, but we are where we are. This is the system. There's no provision for by-elections or anything like that. So I think that it's best if I add to the numbers giving a voice to the West Midlands. OK, well, let's bring in Nikki Sinclaire, who's an independent, an existing MEP, one of the original 6 elected in 2009. What do you make of it, Nikki?
Well, I think, I'm sure your listeners will be thinking the last thing we want is another politician when we're cutting back public services. Antia's going to cost the taxpayers over £5 million in the next 2.5 years. And just to give you an example, earlier this year, youth clubs, 40 youth clubs across Birmingham were threatened because they couldn't fund £3 million. What do we really want? Do we want public services or do we want another politician? Now, Antia just gave the game away about the European Union there. She said they knew it was going to happen because the Lisbon Treaty hadn't been ratified. Well, the reason the Lisbon Treaty hadn't been ratified in June 2009 is because the Irish had said no and they hadn't said yes yet. So it wasn't a foregone conclusion, or is that the Conservative Party and the EU vision that the Irish had to say yes no matter what?
But, Nikki, if we've got an imperfect European Parliament, and all institutions are imperfect in one way or another, isn't it better that at least we have one more person there who is batting for the West Midlands?
No, because it really doesn't make sense. For example, now there are 73 MEPs from the UK out of 750. So even if every UK MEP voted the same, and with all the vast political differences, it would only be about, 9.8%. It has no... And look, I've been there 2.5 years. A single MEP has no difference, and that's why I said, as soon as I was elected, that I was campaigning for my own redundancy and the redundancy of every UK MEP, because they are a waste of taxpayers' money. We need to be governed by our Parliament, Westminster. And I wonder whether Anthea, along with her Conservative colleagues like Malcolm Harbour in the European Parliament, will stand for the European anthem, will profess the European Union as a forward-looking, centrist, federalist Europe, which the Conservatives say they want when they're over there. But of course, David Cameron says something different, and William Hague says something different in the UK. It's just a complete sham, unnecessary, waste of money. And for example, this woman who hadn't been directly elected, and all the legal notices said 6, and they were legal notices, as all elections are legal, Representation of the People Act, etc. This person, she now, Anthony McIntyre, will be entitled to a pension for the rest of her life at the age of 63, just because she's been appointed by an Act of Parliament.
OK, Anthea, go on, answer some of those points that Nikki's raised.
I think it's a bit pot calling kettle black. If she's so worried about the amount she's spending, she must be costing the taxpayer as much as everybody else.
That's why I want to be
that's a bit rich, really, isn't it? And she'll be benefited from a pension, etc., etc. So I think it's a fairly typical argument that we hear. I think that we have to accept that while we're in the European Union, and we are there at the moment, we want to have a strong voice for the West Midlands. There are lots of things we can work on, and I don't think just taking a bat and ball home achieves anything for the region.
OK, Anthea, Nikki, thank you both very much indeed. We'll leave it to listeners to sort out the rest. Do we need another MEP in the West?